Hello and welcome to our People to People Group 2025 Legal Market Update. I am Kalinda Campbell, the Permanent Legal Consultant here in Sydney, our New South Wales office at People to People Recruitment. On today's show, what key trends are shaping the legal industry in 2025? We are joined today by Damian Gordon, the Principal at DFG Legal, and Elliott, CEO at ALPMA, to unpack the key trends shaping the legal landscape across Australia and New Zealand in 2025. What are employers prioritising? What are legal professionals really looking for? And what sets competitive legal employers apart in such a tight market? Also in today's market update, we will cover why are employers hiring in 2025 and what are they prioritising? Is the legal sector keeping up with evolving expectations? And skills for the future. What capabilities will legal professionals need to thrive in 2025? But first, let's kick things off with a look at what's really happening in the legal recruitment market right now. So the legal sector is continuing to face ongoing hiring challenges in 2025, especially when it comes to finding experienced professionals. Personally, I know that senior associates are the hardest to find, with 39% of firms struggling to fill these roles. Lawyers, 25%, and associates, 21%, are also in short supply. Legal support staff like legal assistants and secretaries, of course, remain in very high demand. Over half of law firms surveyed say that they're under-resourced, with 44% feeling slightly short-staffed and 12% feeling significantly short-staffed. While demand for talent remains high, flexibility is still a very top priority. About 82% of firms offer work from home options and 68% provide flexible working hours. But even so, office attendance is still quite strong. So 70% of staff are going into the office at least 4 days a week. Looking at the top roles being hired in 2025, lawyers by far lead the way at 41%, followed by associates 36%, senior associates 33%, legal secretaries 29%, and paralegals 16%. The main reasons firms are hiring include business growth, so 37% of firms say that is the reason, and replacing staff at 34%. While some are also responding to organisational changes, so 17% of firms are doing that, or even seasonal peaks, which is 3% of firms. Overall, about 78% of law firms do plan to grow their teams this year, with most firms planning to expand and many still feeling quite under-resourced. The pressure to attract and retain talent really does remain high. Competitive benefits, so career development opportunities and flexible working arrangements, are no longer optional. They are really essential for standing out in such a notoriously tight legal market. All the insights we've just shared and the conversations we are about to have are drawn directly from our 2025 Employment and Salary Trends Report. This comprehensive report is built off thousands of survey responses from job seekers and employers across Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. It looks at the latest workplace hiring and job seeker trends and can help you and your business make much more informed decisions. If you'd like a deeper dive into salaries, benefits, and workplace trends across your market, you can request your copy by scanning the QR code on the screen at any point during this live stream, or click the link in the comments below. As highlighted in our report, from shifting candidate expectations to growing demand for specialist skills, legal employers are navigating quite big challenges in 2025. To break down more about what's happening in the market, we are joined first today by Damian Gordon, Principal at DFG Legal. Thank you for joining us, Damian. So DFG Legal is a client-focused generalist law firm committed to delivering personalised services across a wide range of matters. Very well known for its approachable and understanding team, DFG Legal does combine experience, passion, and results to provide tailored advice and effective representation. So first and foremost, Damian, what What have been you and your team's experience over the past 12 months in terms of changes in either legal sector turnover or retention rates? What has your experience been?
For the last, we've undergone a significant change in the last 12 months.
Okay.
We're a firm of 12 people. We have
Mhm.
some senior lawyers, we have a junior lawyer, and we have students and some paralegals, very experienced paralegals. Now, I've practiced, this is my 39th year of practice,
Wow.
and my 42nd year being working in the law. So,
Wow.
in terms of what we did, I'm sort of, to an extent, come from the dinosaur age when, from 1986. But what we're finding now is that, and what our firm has done, is that our staff from our senior lawyers now would range between 20 to about 42 outside of
Mhm.
myself, my wife, and our senior settlement agent. So what that has brought is to our firm is a unique understanding of the abilities that of how things need to be done and looking to the future, because it's that freshness of approach in relation to uh, resolving our clients' issues. So
Yeah.
what I mean by that is that, for example, we have some law students who are looking to finish within the next year or so.
Mhm.
Their ability to utilise the technology is absolutely fantastic. And
Yeah.
then what I would say, the ability of people in their mid 30s and so forth, where they would have thought that their ability to utilise the technology is to an extent overtaken by, almost what they see as a younger generation. But their interaction in the way they do that is absolutely fantastic. And
Mm.
I, from my own perspective, technology and we don't fit very well. I'm sort of old school. I always say I'm my father. I'm now my father when the video recorder came out. So what he found impossible, I thought, why? Now that's where we are. But utilising the skills of the experience of being 39 years and across the board, that's why we can offer the services that we do, and getting very senior, some senior solicitors in who are in that younger age bracket, if I could put it that way. That then adds a level across your society. So we find that the retention rates, if I could um, address that, it makes a very stable firm. Whereas previously
Yeah.
we had more mature practitioners, but we found that there was a bit of a gap in the in the market, and also the businesses and the clients are looking for the experience, but being able to relate to people in their own sort of uh, age group, as in where they're going with their life, where their life is up to,
Where they're at. Yeah, of course.
and that
Um,
is very significant.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting point you make, Damien, and I feel that a lot of firms can probably relate to you there. We do have quite a big section in our report actually on generational gaps in the legal industry and across the employment sector in general. And we do find that most firms are either very top heavy or very bottom heavy, depending on where their lawyers do sit, and bridging that gap has been quite a big challenge for them, especially given all of those technological changes that have happened. I mean, who knows where we're going to be in another 10 years' time? So thank you very much for your insight there. And that was really, really interesting and nice to hear that you have had that change and you've felt that sort of change in your firm as well. My next question for you, Damien, will be what have been the biggest challenges for you or your team over the past year?
I think that one of the one of the issues that I have, and this is due to the technology, is that communication, the way you communicate with your clients. I will say, I will pick up the phone and call and talk to my clients or talk to the practitioner. We find a lot of practitioners of a younger age would prefer just to email or text. So we have a constant interaction in relation to, I've sent them the text or I've communicated, and they're waiting for that. They're waiting for a response. I see that more as you want to make the actual contact, like hands-on. So if you're actually talking to the person, that is a little different than just putting an email to someone. So that's one of the biggest challenges, I would say, and it's always been a challenge, is the way you communicate with practitioners and your way you communicate with clients. Because a lot of people don't, I see my grandchildren and they're texting each other, and you can get into one room and to the other. And I know people have remarked on that, but that is one of the things that I would really like younger practitioners just to talk, because I think that they hide behind the computer a little bit, and then they feel safe. The way in the old days, where a solicitor would just write a letter, pick up the phone, communicate, resolve.
Yeah, exactly. And that's very much reflected in my world when I'm hiring as well. Even getting someone to pick up the phone to speak to them about an application for a job is notoriously becoming more and more difficult. And I've heard, across the board that it is becoming one of those message first, talk later sort of realms that we're coming into. So that definitely can be a challenge, and it will be interesting to see where that takes us, whether we will switch back to that in-person face-to-face communication, or whether it will continue to go the way it's going. My final question for you, Damian, is how have salary expectations and pay rise forecasts shifted for you or your team in 2025?
We look at our all of our salaries on a 6-month rotation. The expectation, as I said to one of my staff, throughout your life, everyone's always hungry, but we pay above what the is what is considered to be the appropriate amount. That's because we employ the individual. So it's the individual who really brings what their specific attributes to assist our firm. On that basis, if you get that formula right, you are quite happy to pay above expectation, because people see it as a vocation, not just being employed, and they invest in the firm. So I think that's the biggest issue over the last 12 months. The salary expectations, when people, you want to be able to provide more remuneration for their skill set and what they're doing and how they're discharging their duties, and just being, the wonderful people that they are, as opposed to saying, well, I'm a senior associate, I'm here, and this is what I think I should expect. So it's really paying on not performance and not ability, but the maturity of the person to understand the functions that they're discharging. That's really how we sort of decide what the pays should be, if I could put it.
Yeah, perfect. And that's a really nice way of thinking about it. And I wish a lot of other firms thought about it that way too. But in terms of pay raises, I have spoken with quite a few of my clients who have said last year there were pay raises that 4 50+% mark. They were quite significant. A lot of people were very, very happy with their remuneration raises, which usually happens around this time of year for those larger firms. However, because they were raised so significantly, now there's not really much scope to give them such an increase this year. So they are foreseeing a much less raise. Is that similar across your firm?
To an extent, but that then, budgets come into it, the ability to, provide in the remuneration. But if you keep that, one follows the other. It's about expanding your market. It's about expanding your retention of your clients and adding to your client base. So one gets the other to an extent.
Yeah.
And and we'll be in a situation in 12 months' time where people, if you're employing, in the old days, if you had a PA as opposed to a first-year solicitor, the PA would be earning more than the first-year solicitor. Now, then we have the situation where our paralegals will be becoming solicitors. So therefore, you drop their wage to say, well, now you're only a first-year solicitor, which we can't do. So it's really a progression, along. So that's one of the issues that we're finding, because we want to retain the very good people that we have, and
of course,
and they want to stay. So that's really that we're in a very good position, which to an extent came about from like anything, most of the good things, with a bit of chance, where we thought, well, we'll just try younger practitioners, and we were very surprised about how keen and professional and everything they were. So it was great.
Oh, that's great to hear. Well, thank you very much for your insights, Damian. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
I would like to shift gears now slightly and bring in our second guest for today's update, which is Emma Elliott. She is the CEO at ALPMA. The Australasian Legal Practice Management Association, ALPMA, is the peak industry body for professionals managing the business of law. Representing both lawyers and managers across Australia and New Zealand, ALPMA supports its members with insights, resources, and professional development programs to help legal practices grow, evolve, and lead in such a changing legal landscape. So thank you very much for joining us today, Emma.
Pleasure.
So first question for you, what have been yourself and your team's experience in the past 12 months, I guess, going again to what we were discussing with Damian about retention rates and legal sector turnover?
Yeah, so look, when I talk about ALPMA specifically, our turnover, we've lost 2 staff members in the last 12 months for various reasons. One, however, has since returned, which is amazing. So as much, and she actually left and went back into a legal role within the law firm and decided that life was perhaps better with ALPMA. So she's come on back, which is fantastic. And then we've been able to grow the team as well with another 2 roles. So we're, as ALPMA, trucking along quite well, which is great. But what we've seen in the legal industry, and with ALPMA, as I think you mentioned, we also do a salary survey across New Zealand and Australia. We speak directly to the management teams within those law firms, and we ask them to complete the survey and provide all of their data. So it's slightly different to some of the other reports in the market, but our data shows that across New Zealand, retention rates actually were quite stable this year. We had them at, turnover rates, I should say, at about 18%. In Australia, they were slightly higher at 23%, but that is down from the year before where we saw it was 27%. When we actually then dig into some of those numbers, we can see that there's slight changes within the size of the law firm. So we find that the smaller law firms have a lower rate, turnover rate, and the larger law firms have a higher turnover rate. And then if we dig into it again, what we're also finding is if you actually look at the levels of lawyer within the law firms, the 1 to 5 year PAE has got a significantly higher turnover rate than other levels, is what we're finding. We think that some of those drivers are probably coming from that cohort went through university during COVID. They have been starved of travel opportunities. And so we're seeing that they're starting to move overseas. So New Zealand might be coming to Australia, and Australia, I think, is looking still to the UK market. So that's been quite interesting. Our data also shows that about 40% of departures are lateral hires, so going into other law firms. But there is also a bit of a concern. We haven't looked into it more deeply, but about 20% of people that move on from a law firm in any given year actually are leaving the industry. And there's probably a number of reasons for that. And it's quite high.
Yeah.
So
that's really good information. I mean, when you were saying all of that, I was comparing it to all of our surveys and stats as well, because we did find very, very similar information. And most relevant, I think, what you were saying about those sort of junior lawyers up to that 1 to 5 PQE mark, typically are sitting, I mean, with the generalization in mind, typically are sitting at that Gen Z or those more younger generations. And in our report, we do say, you know, the average tenure for a Gen Z is much, much shorter compared to somebody at a baby boomer generation. So very, very interesting that you said that. Thank you.
And you're spot on. Like across the generations, there are differences. Yeah.
Definitely. My next question is, what have been the biggest opportunities for your team over the past year?
Yeah, so look, when I think about what we do and the service that we provide our members, I think the biggest opportunity for us is really just to understand that our members and law firms are just under enormous pressure. They are under-resourced and they are stretched really thinly. And they are trying to achieve, you know, quite ambitious, in some cases, business strategies with very limited resources to be able to do that. So for us, I think there's a huge opportunity for ALPMA to be their L&D team and their go-to resource for change within the industry. For example, we know that law firms are very good where they can attract staff and get them on board. They're good at getting them in the door. What they're more inconsistent, I will say, with is the development of those lawyers throughout their career. And I think that has changed over the last few years. I think what lawyers and teams are looking for is very different now to what it was, perhaps, and picking up on some of what Damian was saying. You know, the legal landscape, the way that law firms operate, is not the same. And these generations coming through don't necessarily have those ambitions to get to partnership. So that means, how are you going to retain them if that's not the lure, right? So for us, it's learning and development is our biggest opportunity. It's being ahead of the game in terms of regulations and what our law firms need to know. For example, anti-money laundering regulations are coming into Australia this year. That is going to be a significant issue or item that our members need to turn their attention to. And so we find our role as that, you know, safe pair of hands that can kind of help guide our law firms.
Certainly. And that's quite interesting you say that, because we actually did have an event in our office earlier this year about the right to disconnect as well. There are so many legislative changes that are coming in that a lot of firms do need to know about, and that's really good that your team is there to support those L&D opportunities as well, because informed hiring managers is really, really important, especially if you just have one way of doing things the whole way through, it's not going to work. You do need to be adaptable and you do need to understand those changes, of course. So as as you said, Emma, recently ALPMA did release its 2025 Legal Industry HR Issues and Salary Survey report. So what have been those key findings, I guess, compared to previous years?
Yeah, so like your report, it's probably quite extensive, and I'm not going to be able to cover off on everything. But look, we have found, and you've mentioned it already, that salary increases this year are not going to be as high as what they were last year. In New Zealand, we're looking at, CPI. Well, we've seen that the roles have actually moved by about 2%. So we look at the bands and we analyse where they're sitting in comparison to the years before. So on average, the bands have moved up by 2%. That's in New Zealand. In Australia, they moved up by 4.1%. But in the Australian survey in particular, we found that early career lawyers, so in that 1 to 5 year PAE, and picking up on what I was talking about before, they're attracting a 5 to 10% increase. So that, is going to be playing in with, the retention strategy. And I like what Damian also said about, trying to take money off the table, right? So get rid of money, pay people at the level that the business can afford, but enables that person to take all of those, financial concerns off their radar and out of their minds, so that then they can focus on the work at hand and adding value to clients. The other thing that we always see a bit of a disconnect with is the expectations of law firms to grow their headcount every year, and then the reality of them growing their law firm is very, they're not the same, right? And there's a lot of reasons for that.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Well, thank you very much for those insights, Emma. Really appreciate it. So bringing both of you back to the screen now, just to get a bit more of a broader view and I guess some different perspectives of the market. I'll start with you first, Damian. So in our recent 2025 report, 82% of legal employers do offer remote working options, 68% offer flexible working hours, 72% cover professional memberships. Are you seeing the same trends in your organisation, or have you taken a bit of a different approach to benefits to attract and maintain that talent retention?
Yes, but not specifically just to bring people in. We always have offered the to meet those professional organisation fees and the development and so forth, and that's separate to their to their remuneration. We also offer the ability to work from home in relation, because there's so many now, in terms of mothers and looking after children and the ability to discharge your work. It's not 9 to 5. It's really you being able to meet what your other expectations are and what your other responsibilities are and duties. So we try and fit in with that, but it's very important. We've found that to an extent you've got to keep people in a very cohesive network within the frame. So you have, your weekly meetings, even if they're by teams, and so forth. And we have 3 offices, so we're heavily dependent on the technology. But that's very important. It's very important to come into the office. So we'll have about we try every quarter, we'll have a day where we close down and we just do an activity.
Yeah,
and that then brings them together. I mean, the next one, it was either a cooking class or axe throwing. And axe throwing won. And, there's only
That's
2 gentlemen
awesome.
in our firm.
So awesome.
It's axe throwing and then lunch. So there might be a few frustrations being taken out. But I think it's really important, but it's important to keep the office, because people need that, office home, and it brings home the responsibility. I knew a barrister when I first started, and he worked from home. He would get dressed and he would leave his house and walk around the block and enter it as if he was starting work. Right. And when he finished for the day, he would leave his house, walk around the block and enter it again. So that was his way of trying to disconnect from, working from home.
Yeah, so, yeah. I have heard of a few people picking up habits like that. And I mean, sometimes you do get the odd few that will just roll out of bed and log on. But I'm very much, I've got to do my normal morning routine. And I must say, Damian, we did an axe throwing team event as well. Very highly recommend. It was very, very stress relieving. I can say that. Thank you for those insights, Damian. Emma, how about your perspective?
Look, I would agree with the conversation so far. I think that our survey, when we ran it, we had slightly higher rates for remote work, flexible hours, and also covering professional memberships. But picking up on what Damian was saying, I think that when we look at the number of females within the legal industry, and in particular when we look at the lawyer roles that are occupied by females, the flexibility and the ability to work from home are actually items that will keep females within the firm over salary, right? They find that those benefits are of greater benefit or of value to them than, say, remuneration. Now, I'm not saying pay them less. That is not what's coming out of my mouth. But what I'm saying is I don't think that firms can afford not to offer those benefits to their employees. I also think that there is a trend, and certainly the law firms that we speak to, where they do want their lawyers and teams coming into the office on a regular basis and trying to mandate in-office days, I guess, where the whole team can come in and get together and build those relationships. Now, ALPMA is a virtual association, right? All of my staff work from home. We are located all across Australia and New Zealand. We operate on 5 different time zones. We're all part-time. It's amazing, right? But what we don't have is that in-person communication, but we make sure that we get together once a year. And there is such great value in that. So I think that there's great value in the law firms bringing people into the office, getting them into those teams, and communicating, and bringing the people aspect back to it. I think that's really important. And I think also that when law firms are looking towards their skill shortages, and I know that we might touch on this a little bit later, but leadership is a skill, leadership and management, right? And it is very difficult to manage remotely. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's far easier to lead and manage and mentor when you're in person.
Because we do family law, as one of their aspects, and you see how much responsibility is put on the mother or the female partner of the relationship, and you can talk about traditions, you can talk about being conservative, but there's still a lot of males out there who expect the female to do all those traditional female tasks and still have a job. And that has to be taken into consideration as to how they're able to work in a firm. I mean, you drop the kids off by 9 o'clock at school, you're not going to be in the office, at 8:30. So you have to be very flexible and, for some reason, and it's always usually the mother that has to take the child to the doctor's appointment. I don't know why the father can't, but it's usually always the mother. I don't know if it's because the mother won't trust him to listen, but, and get it right. But it's always those types of little things, and that erodes in relation to it. So it's very much keeping their dignity you know, and ability to recognise how important the tasks that they do outside of the office and how that contributes to their life experience in advising the clients. So that's really what we.
And that's when you start looking at the holistic, the person as a whole, right? As opposed to
And having said that, being a mere male, you know, I can be, you know, you can have as many brownie points as ever and it goes out the window. 2 minutes. Start again.
Yeah, definitely.
Just a mere male.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much for both of those insights. And I mean, I do agree with both of you. There are a lot of things that we can get into and delve deeper into with regards to those insights as well. But let's move on to our next question. So our 2025 report also found that 65% of legal employers are investing in career development training, and 67% of the firms that we surveyed are covering training costs. Do either of you think that L&D has played quite a similar role in your own retention strategy, and what sort of outcomes have you seen from L&D strategies? Let's start with Damian.
I think that, yes, I think it plays a huge role. It plays a huge role because the law changes so quickly. So what in particular in relation to our firm, our senior people, we're establishing that L&D in relation to then using, you know, becoming almost like a cluster, you know, specialising in particular areas. We've had our wills and estates senior lawyer accepted into a, you know, very distinguished course, which is very hard to get into. That will add to the training. We're meeting all of that. That cost. And then with the junior lawyers, we find that L&D is more across the board. So we sit down with them, we ask them what their interests are. It's quite funny because when to an extent, the younger ones, if I could say that, they shy away from litigation. So they want more just, you know, they don't want that angst, as it were.
Yeah.
But so L&D for a younger practitioner, I think needs to be more across the board. And for the senior practitioners, then you really start to hone your skills deeply in a particular area. That's how we look at it. In terms of our business and growing your foundations.
Of course. And of course, Emma, as you were saying, you have released a lot of statistics to do with what you've seen. Have you seen anything in particular about L&D's effect?
I think we see, as Damian was saying, in terms of the substantive law, I think that law firms are very good at investing in substantive law and paying for that for their lawyers, and that might be over and above the CPD points that are mandatory that they have to get. But we have seen a real shift in career development training, specifically around the leadership and management space, and identifying top talent within law firms and then creating future leader programs for that top talent. I think that over the course of, you know, a couple of years, it's probably longer, I think that the legal industry has probably seen that they're quite insular, I guess, in terms of external business experience and being able to bring in external business principles, I guess, and apply them to law firms. And I think if you look at how a business that's not a professional service firm operates, you would find that learning and development is a key component within that business. And I think that law firms are starting to bring that in a business sense as well as, or in addition to the substantive law. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, definitely. And I completely agree. I mean, you do find, you know, that transactional area of law is a lot more attractive for a lot of junior lawyers, and investing in certain things can definitely take different priorities. But look, I am conscious of time. I don't want to keep you both too much longer. So I'm going to direct the last two questions to each one of you. So firstly, for you, Damian, what key skills do you see both junior and senior legal professionals do need to succeed in in 2025?
Communication. To me, that is the key, communication, because if you can communicate well, you can understand what your client's issues are or what you're actually attacking. There has to be, law hasn't changed in this aspect. You've got to know what the law is and you've got to know how to advocate that. So whether it's to a court, whether it's to another practitioner, but it's to make the client understand exactly what their issue is and how you're going to implement a resolution, because they're not interested in, anything else, but they've got this problem. That's why they're there to see you.
Yeah.
And you see the very, very best people in any profession can explain what they're doing as if you're in grade one, and it's a wonderful ability because they always do it in a very humble way, and I just wanted to say what Emma was saying about the legal development and the management and so forth, that I find sometimes younger practitioners are very eager because they think, well, I'm here and you've got to learn your trade first to an extent. So identifying is very important, but you have to have that conversation sometimes with not getting ability mixed up with ambition.
Yeah.
But we do try and bring leadership roles along, as it were, and it's interesting. The people who pick them up or don't want to pick them up, if I could put that way. Sorry. I just wanted to add that.
No, that's all right. Appreciate your thoughts, Damian. And over to you, Emma. Now, the reason I'm directing this question to you is because a lot of my clients have been asking about AI technology, and we do have an excerpt of your own in our market report about AI in the legal industry. So tell me about technology and AI in law. I mean, how has AI impacted the legal industry? And I mean, where do we think it's going to go?
Look, I think AI, there was a lot of hype around AI 12 months ago, and we've all been on a journey to understand the impacts of AI and how we can leverage it to the best within our firms. I think that, technology as a whole, I think the legal industry is embracing that far more. I think that law firms are, I think that the hype is over to a degree, and I think that there's more practical application and more practical research, I guess, going into how law firms can leverage the AI from within the programs that they already have within their firms. Yeah. So, for example, I think law firms will be working closer and should be working closer with their legal tech providers. The legal tech industry is so far advanced and are going to be guiding the law firms through how they can use AI within their firms. And I think that the law firms need to be speaking with their legal tech providers, having those conversations, looking at their business from not necessarily from the angle that, let's bring AI in and see how we can actually use it. I think it's actually identifying a challenge or a problem that can be that's specific within their law firm, and then seeing how they can use AI to manage that problem. Now, whether that's AI, automation, technology, etc., I think that's the way to approach it.
Yeah, that's quite interesting you say that, actually, because I've spoken to a couple of firms that have developed their own AI tools already, and they have used it specifically for discovery, so reducing that time that's required for discovery. So definitely some good insights there. And look, I just wanted to thank you both very much for joining today and sharing your insights as well. If anyone watching today is wanting to reach out or get in touch with either Damian and DFG Legal or Emma and ALPMA, you can visit the comments for all information below. Thank you once again. So just a reminder that all the insights shared today are based off our 2025 Employment and Salary Trends Report. If you'd like a deeper dive into salaries, benefits and workplace trends across your market, you can request your copy by scanning the QR code on screen now or clicking the link in the comments below. Lastly, whether you're looking to grow your career or build your team with the right talent, the People to People group can help. As an award-winning recruitment agency, we operate across Australia and the United Kingdom with specialist teams in every major market, of course, including legal. Across the ditch in New Zealand, we've proudly recruited for over 23 years through Frog Recruitment, with offices in both Auckland and Wellington. And in South Australia, Edge Recruitment are Adelaide's leading specialists in property, real estate, and general administration roles. Contact details are on screen now, or see the links in the comments to reach out to one of your teams today. Well, that's it for today, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today for our special legal market update. So I do recruit across the legal permanent team. If you do need any support, feel free to reach out to me. My contact details will be on the screen, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.